Hi friends, today we're going to talk about how to retell a story by using transition words or temporal words. So transition words are words that help move the story along and tell what order events happen in the story. So as you can see here, I have 3 labeled. Green are the things that happen in the beginning. Yellow are the words that help talk about things that happen in the middle of the story, and red are temporal words that help signify the ending of the story. So some of the words that you might use or you might read in a story or to retell the story are things like first, once, in the beginning. These words tell whoever's listening or reading or writing that what you're talking about happened in the beginning of the story. When you use words like then, after that, next, or later, those are temporal words that tell the person who's listening that what you're talking about happened in the middle of the story. And finally, which is one of the temporal words, finally, last, and in the end are all words you can use to signal that what you're talking about happened at the end of the story. So I'm going to read this book called Big Al, and I want you to listen for transition words and then also think about how you would retell the story. How would you tell someone what we read about using these words? So here we go. Big Al. By Andrew Clements. Oops, I skipped a page. Sorry, friends. Here we go. In the wide blue sea, there was a very friendly fish named Big Al. You could not find a nicer fish. But Big Al was also very, very scary. Look, he looks very scary. Other fish seemed to have at least one friend. Some had many, but Big Al had none. He did not really blame the other fish. How could he expect little fish to trust a great big fish with eyes and skin and teeth like his? So Big Al was lonely and cried big salty tears into the big salty sea. Look, you can see he's very sad in this picture. But Big Al really wanted friends, so he worked at it. First, he tried wrapping himself up with seaweed. He thought it was a great disguise, but no one else did. Who wants to stop and talk to a floating plant that has big, sharp teeth? And I heard a temporal word right here. First. They're telling what he did first to try to make friends. Then he thought that if he puffed himself up around, the other fish would laugh and see how clever and silly he could be. All they saw was how big he could be, and they steered clear. I heard another temporal word here. Then he thought that if he puffed himself up around, so that's what he did next. Very early one morning, Big Al went down to the bottom and flopped and wiggled himself into the sand until he was almost covered up. He looked much smaller. When other fish came near, Big Al talked and joked with them and had a delightful time. But then one scratchy little grain of sand got stuck up in his gills. And he sneezed. When the clouds of sand cleared away, all the other fish were gone. I heard another temporal word here. But then, one scratchy little grain. That's sad. There he is with the sand puffing away from him. Al even changed his color one day so he could look like he belonged to a school of tiny fish passing by. He bubbled along with them for a while, laughing and feeling like he was just one of the crowd. But he was so big and clumsy that when all of the tiny fish darted to the left and then quickly back to the right, Big Al just plowed straight ahead. He went bumping and thumping right into the little fish. Before he could even say, "Excuse me," they were all gone, and he was all alone again, sadder than ever. Just when Big Al was starting to be sure that he would never have a single friend again, something happened. He was floating along sadly, watching some of the smaller fish, and was wishing they would come closer. As he watched, a net dropped down silently from above, and in an instant, they were caught. Uh-oh. I'm going to make a prediction by looking at this picture. It looks like maybe he's going to try to help them out. Big Al forgot all about being lonely, and he forgot all about being sad. His eyes bulged out bigger and rounder than ever, and with a mighty flip to his tail, he opened his mouth, charged straight at the net. The net was strong, but Big Al was stronger. He ripped right through it, and all of the little fish rushed out through the hole. But when Big Al tried to turn around and go out of the hole, he got all tangled up in the net. He was stuck. The net went higher and higher toward the bright surface of the sea, and the little fish watched Big Al as he disappeared above them. When the little fish were able to speak again, all they talked about was the huge, wonderful fish that had saved them. How great to be free! But what a shame that the big fish had been captured. Just then, there was a tremendous, crashing splash above them, and the small fish dashed away. Was it the net again? Not at all. It was Big Al. Those fishermen took one look at him and threw him right back into the ocean. I wonder what happens at the end by looking at this picture. And now there is one huge, puffy, scary, fierce-looking fish in the sea who has more friends than anyone else. Big Al. So they had a lot of transition words in the beginning. Now, after this, I'm going to have you log into Seesaw, and there will be an activity to retell Big Al. I'm going to put a couple pictures from the book. It's good to use the illustrations in a book to help you retell a story. And you're going to look at those pictures and take a video of yourself retelling the book, Big Al. So I'm going to remind you of the transition words. Things like first, once, in the beginning, help tell what happens first. Words in the middle, then, next, after that, later. And when you're retelling about the last part of the story, you say finally, in the end, or last. Those are some of your options. So use those temporal transition words to retell Big Al.